Bears get into trouble when they find an unprotected bee yard. Beekeepers suffer damage when bears break up their hives. One answer is to keep the bears out of the bee yards using electricity. Designing electric fences is in a developing stage. The three designs shown have worked for differing applications. Two are permanent structures and useful where bears continually approach established yards. The last one in this photo is temporary and transportable. From the time the footage was shot for this presentation until the final editing was through, new structures and equipment came on the market, and they are mentioned where one or more ways are applicable to build the fence. New designs and pieces of equipment will continue to emerge, making what we use today obsolete in years to come. Nevertheless, we've got to dig in somewhere, and so here are three designs that work today. The first electrified fence and gate design that Jim Carlson, Claire Simmons, and beekeeper Joe Bowden are constructing near Big Timber is 40 by 40 feet. It allows for 2 sets of hives and a drive-through in between. The treated corner posts have a 5-inch diameter and are 8 feet long, 3 feet in the ground, 5 feet above. Inline posts are 3 inches in diameter and 6.5 feet long, 1.5 feet in the ground, 5 feet above. The gate will be the weakest link and should be located away from the bear's probable approach. The strongest link, the back side of the fence, faces the vegetation and drainage, the likely approach. Measure up from the ground level and mark where each of the 8 fence wires will be attached to the posts. The bottom wire is a ground at 4 inches. The wire above it at 6 inches is the first hot. The wires alternate with grounds at 4, 10, 22, and 38 inches. The hot wires are at 6, 16, 28, and 48 inches.
The main point of entry on these bears, they approach the fence and they try to enter about eye level, I guess. Now for a young bear, a small bear is going to try to get in down on the lower wires. That's where we've got them spaced a lot closer together down there. A larger, more adult-sized bear is probably going to come in somewhere in here. He puts his paw on a ground wire, a neutral wire, and tries to stick his head through. His head and neck should contact the hot wire. Or if he puts his paw on the hot wire right off the bat, he should get a shock.
The 2 posts on either side of the gate opening have the ends of the fence wires attached to them. Cutters with reinforced jaws can be used, or the wire can be broken. Now, don't be scared. The bandages on the hand had nothing to do with fencing or electricity, but that's another story. The 4 hot wires have ends attached to donut-shaped ceramic insulators, although another choice today is the bullnose insulators, available where fencing equipment is sold. To attach the ceramic insulators to the posts, cut 8 pieces of wire, each about 3 feet long. Each wire is run twice through an insulator, and the ends secured with non-slip Nycopress crimps. Or more easily installed joint clamps. Or just tie the wire in a square knot using no other hardware. These wire circles are attached to each post by a steeple driven in all the way at levels 6, 16, 28, and 48 inches high. 12.5 gauge high tensile galvanized smooth wire is drug off the wire reel and strung all the way around the exclosure. Insul tube sheaths, shown here to protect the hot wire around the wood post, have been replaced by an improved idea. Reason being that acid from bugs decaying in moisture inside corrodes the zinc and rust results, lowering the electric efficiency. Now it is recommended that 2 of these pin-lock insulators be used on the corner posts to keep the hot wire away from it. The same pin-lock insulators are nailed to each inline post at heights of 6, 16, 28, and 48 inches. Each hot wire is laid over one of these insulators and secured with the pin lock. The connectors used in this construction to secure wires to wires are called Nyco-Press crimps or sleeves. The drawback to using them is they need to be placed on wires early on in the numbers that will be needed for connections later. At the fence post on the gate closure side, Nyco-Press crimps need to be placed on the wire ends, or use joint clamps or tie knots in the wire when needed. To break wire, give the hangout wire a quarter turn, pull it back towards you, and it's off at the wrap. Number of crimps needed, if crimps are used, including the one to secure the wire around the insulator, are 2 on the hot wire at 48 inches, 3 on the hot wire at 28 inches, 3 on the hot wire at 16 inches, and 2 on the hot wire at 6 inches. At the fence post on the gate hinge side, 2 crimps are on the top hot wire and just 1 crimp on the wires below.
These here are 4 hot wires.
On the back side of the exclosure, inline reel tighteners are placed on each wire at about its midway point. This allows the wire to be tightened pulling equidistant from either end. After a year's sagging, the wires can be retightened by adjusting these reels. Setting them off-center will reduce the chances they could touch the reel tighteners, which will be on the ground wires. Strands to be used as ground wires are pulled off the reel and nailed with steeples between the hot wires. Ground wires are positioned at 4, 10, 22, and 38 inches on the corner and inline posts. Steeples are not pounded all the way in, so these ground wires can slip through when being tightened with the inline tighteners. At the gate hinge side, the ground wires are pulled around each post once and secured with a crimp, joint clamp, or a knot. The bottom ground wire at 4 inches needs a second crimp if using them to allow a later ground wire connection between the fence and the gate. On the gate closure side, if crimps are used, they are 2 on the 38-inch wire, 3 on the 22 and 10-inch wires, and 2 on the 4-inch wire. After fastening the 4 ground wires, they too are tightened on the back side using inline reel tighteners. All of the reels, both hot and ground, are separated in a zigzag pattern, so a strong wind and line sag will not easily allow them to touch each other and ground out. In the past, vegetation under the fence was thought to reduce the hot wire load if it touched it. Today's energizers, and the B150 we'll use on this one, will desiccate the grass and weeds so fast they won't drain 1 electron. So weed eat under the fence if you want, but it's unnecessary. Building the gate is next. This will be a wire gate, but other experiments with hog-tight or sheep-tight woven wire may also work. This demonstrated design has been completely effective in retarding bears except in one case. A poor ground on the fence was the problem then. A gate closer is nailed to the top of the post. Insul timbers, eucalyptus wood which grows in Australia, are used for the gate ends. Hot wires can be wrapped around them and will not ground out. The top 7 wires of this gate will be hot. Only the bottom wire will be aground. Mark the insul timbers at the 8 wire heights of 48, 38, 28, 22, 16, 10, 6, and 4 inches. A double wire is tied around the bottom of the fence post to hold the bottom of the gate on the closure side. 2 similar wire circles hold the insul timber next to the fence post on the hinge side of the gate. Wires are run between the insul timbers and wrapped around them. A cotter pin is pushed through the hole where holes have been drilled and secures the hot wire at this point. Pre-drilled holes are not available at the bottom of the timbers. Hot and ground wires are wrapped around at these points. Additional holes can be drilled here, but the wood is so dense that a bit to drill steel must be used. The top hot wire and bottom ground are placed on first. On these gate wires, if crimps are being used, total numbers including ones to secure the wire ends are 4 on the top wire and 3 on the lower 7. Reel tighteners are placed on each wire and staggered. You cannot tighten the reels as tightly on the gate as you can on the back of the fence, because the insul timbers bow at either end under the pressure and might break if flexed too much. Now a center wire is cut and slipped through a crimp or fastened with a joint clamp, or the center wire can be wrapped around each of the hot wires to tie them together. This center wire also acts as a partial stabilizer. This open section between post and insule timber at the gate closure side can be lessened if necessary by moving the gate closer and the bottom wire loop closer to the fence. Would only need to do this if a smaller bear could slip through, but it hasn't happened yet. A notched fiberglass stay or another insule timber is placed in the center of the gate to act as a stabilizer. More of the cotter pins are separated and used as wire ties to secure the 7 hot wires and 1 ground wire to it.
Yeah, pretty crucial with ground wire being by itself. And there's the gate.
A section of wire is cut to extend from the bottom fence ground wire across to the gate ground wire and fastened at both points. Then the fence top hot wire is connected to the gate hot wires through an off-on switch placed on the hinge side fence post. This example shows a copper wire used for flexibility, but this is not acceptable. The copper and galvanized wires disassociate, and over time will destroy this connection. The thing to make this connection with is 12.5 gauge insulated galvanized wire. Fence side to the bottom of the switch, gate side wire connected to the top of the switch. Up is on, sideways is off.
I'm going to hook the ground wires up first.
Tying together the ground to ground and the positive to positive fence wires is next. The galvanized wire connectors are passed through the non-powered wire loops hooked around the post. The 38-inch level ground wire is connected to the ground at 22 inches by crimps, joint clamps, or wire wraps. The ground at 22 inches clamps to the wire at 10 inches, and so forth down to the bottom ground at 4 inches. Looking back through from the inside of the exclosure, the double insulated galvanized wire is used to tie the hot wires together at the 48, 28, 16, and 6-inch levels. The black double insulated galvanized wires are leaned to the inside of the fence to keep them from accidentally being disturbed. Once these connections are made, the hot wires of the fence can be activated. 2 B boxes, one on top of the other, are placed in the corner of the exclosure closest to the gate closure side to hold the power supply. Black double insulated wires will be attached, one to the bottom ground wire and bottom hot wire on the fence. A wire connector, called a wire tap, or a joint clamp, both of which can be used any time to slip over the wire, can be used to make the connection. The wire tap does require a crimp at either end and use of special pliers. The joint clamp is a nut and bolt configuration and only requires regular screwdriver and wrench to tighten. The hot and negative wires are run into the bottom of the B box. The B150 Energizer has a switch on the bottom which will deactivate the fence. The ground wire from the fence is attached to the green post on the bottom of the B150. The hot fence wire is connected to the red post. The Deep Cycle Marine RV battery is placed in the bottom of the box with posts toward the center. The white wire out of the Energizer is split into the positive and negative wires which bring the electricity to the Energizer from the battery. They are attached to the battery posts using alligator clips. Out of these 2 clips also project separate positive and negative wires which join together at an automotive connector. At the other end of this connector is the solar panel feed wire. For this setup, a flexible solar panel is used, and yes, it will charge the battery under any lighting conditions, sun, shade, even a flashlight pointed at its surface. A weak link in too many setups like this is failure to keep the battery charged so it can deliver the power to the Energizer to shock the fence when called for. This solar panel solves that problem.
Let's go ahead and bolt that solar panel down to the... Turn it off. Let our charge. Our fence is going to be hot, so we're on.
Finally, a good ground for the system must be established, preferably in moist soil. This ground system is not considered up to spec because not enough rods are used and not enough space is between them. The recommended placement of ground rods is to use 3 of them, connected, and a minimum of 10 feet distance between each one, similar to this fence design which uses insulated wire for the ground. This is from the second fence example. The ground can be placed inside the fence as these are to reduce tampering or tripping over. A good ground is a key to delivering a good shock. A ground is like a TV antenna. The bigger the antenna, the better the reception. A wider spaced, well-placed ground delivers a bigger, shocking reception. The shock ability of this pulsing electrical setup is powerful.
7200, 7300 volts. And it's because of the pulse. So they're rated in joules. And the Shure charger, I think, puts out about 6.4 joules.
A shock of 6.4 joules, which is the equivalent of being hit by a 12-volt battery system twice. The only time this fence configuration failed and needed an assist was once when the earth around it was so dry a poor ground resulted, and a grizzly bear was not hurt enough by the gate hot wires to keep him from going through. The solution was to rig the gate with the 8 alternating hot and ground wires just as the rest of this fence is rigged. There was no problem with the bear going through again. The instructions for this fence and the next one are in the accompanying pamphlet entitled The Bears and the Bees. This is the second electrical fence configuration, using cattle panels as the ground, which has gained some popularity around Lewistown. This design was placed around 4 bee yards owned by Don Gregory, which have chronically had bear problems. None of them have been bothered by bears since the fence installation. 4 other bee yards of his, which have not had serious bear problems in the past, were left unfenced. All 4 of these were broken into by bears. They were probably concentrated in this lower elevation area because of hot, dry weather and less food. 15 metal fence posts are driven into the ground and have cattle panels wired to them. These metal posts act as a ground, as do the panels, when they are connected to the 6-foot-long ground rods. The size of this exclosure is determined by the number of 16-foot panels used. 2 used on each side equals a 32 by 32 foot exclosure. Additional panels or half panels can be used to enlarge the area. In order to get a 16-foot gate opening to drive through, one panel was cut in half and the 8-foot sections placed at either corner of the fence on the gate side. A full 16-foot panel, then placed between these two, offers a wide drive-through access to work the hives. In one corner of the yard sits the power source. This one includes a metal framework supporting a solar panel. Under this is the same B150 Energizer as used in the previous design. Red and black feed wires from the solar panel travel down to the 12-volt Marine RV battery to charge it. It's housed inside this plastic case. A second set of black and red cables, also attached to the battery posts, come out of the box and travel into the white insulated tube and then into the Energizer. From the Energizer, a hot wire and a ground wire emerge. The ground wire continues to a green alligator clip connected to a 12.5 gauge double insulated galvanized wire. This is connected to 3 6-foot metal ground rods driven into the ground on the inside of the exclosure. The 32-foot fence side allows 10+ feet of distance between each of the rods. At the end of this wire, furthest from the power source, the ground wire is connected to the cattle panels, making them ground also. The hot wire from the Energizer ends in a red alligator clip that connects to 2 insulated wires. One hot wire goes to the top of the fence and is attached to a poly wire. This hot poly wire extends around the top of the exclosure and is held away from the panels by plastic extenders 5 to 6 inches long. The second hot wire from the alligator clip electrifies poly tape, which extends around the fence at the mid-cattle panel level. The poly tape is held away from the panels by wire offsets tipped with pin locks. An important note here has to do with attraction. Always use white poly wire or poly tape. Bears, like most animals, see only in black and white. most of nature appears in shades of gray to them. So stark white stands out, and being curious creatures, they will put their noses on it to find out more about it. And there's a shocking lesson. If the bear grabs the grounded panel and the polytape touches the bear, there's a large shock. If it somehow misses the tape, but grabs the panel and touches the polywire, there's another shock. So far, no bears have gotten through this fence setup. The bears are known to have been around the fences from their paw prints in the wet grass. In order to gain access to the inside, the circuit of electricity must be broken by these plastic gate handles. By breaking the connection here on the two hot wires, the gate panel can be pulled back, and the operator may turn off the switch on the bottom of the Energizer for added protection while working in the exclosure. These handles are UV stabilized. The usual kind of handles one can obtain are not so stabilized, which means eventually they will break down and finally allow the shock to come through them when grabbed. The UV stabilized ones guard against this happening. Turning the switch on, shutting and wiring the gate panel, and reconnecting the handles puts the electric fence back into operation. This unit also can be used as a permanent yard, but can be broken down during the off-season with the polywire and polytape rolled up and stored away, along with the power supply. Cattle panels can remain up or taken down and stacked until next season. Finally, this third example, for cases where immediate but not permanent electrical protection might be needed, these photos of a temporary structure set up on Forest Service land near Missoula may be helpful. This fence requires 5,000 volts to operate effectively, and so must be well grounded. It can only be used in moist site locations. The design was originally to keep show horses in one spot. It's also been used to keep bears away from food and pack boxes in backcountry camps. The size is 12 feet by 12 feet. That requires about 330 feet of continuous polytape, which comes off this reel and can be rewrapped onto it and transported. For larger, temporary fences, there are polytape reels of 660 feet, 3/8, and 1/4 of a mile in length. The continuous tape makes a fence of all hot wires. The plastic posts, called tread ends, are pushed into the ground by foot. This fence also has 4 tread ends braced against the corners, giving additional support. 2 Energizers are displayed, the B11 and the B10. The B11 has a stainless steel 1/2-inch ground rod attached to its bottom. This can be pushed into the soil by foot. The ground clip is attached to the rod, and the positive clip is attached to the polytape. This B11 Energizer delivers 0.11 joules and is operated by 6 D-cell batteries. There is a timer switch to determine pulse rate as a battery saver. The daytime period can be set for every 3 seconds, and the night pulse every 1 second. This scheme can be reversed, or the 24-hour period can be all 1-second pulses. The 6 D-cell batteries must be alkaline, which will operate in below freezing conditions. Supplying energy continuously at the 1-second electrical pulse rate, the 6 D-cell batteries will last 3 months or longer. The second Energizer hanging on the fence is the B10, delivering 0.10 joules. It has a separate ground rod on the inside of the fence. This rod, the B10 Energizer, tread-in posts, and reel of polytape come as a horse corral kit, which fits into the canvas carrying bag inside the exclosure. Electric fences working for man to protect what he wants to put inside them are still in the developing stages. But the results are in, that when a properly grounded and properly charged and powerful enough electrical deterrent fence is built and properly maintained, it will deter anything or anyone who tries to get through it.